friends. We find ourselves in the wonderful position of having a full house once more. And so I ask you, if you are somebody who has the physical ability, and if you are somebody who is emotionally ready for this, please come move to the front. Our front rows have space.
It's much brighter up front anyway. Well, good morning, everyone. I am Amy Firestein, she, her pronouns, and I share leadership of today's service with Rev. Bran Lennox. I was suddenly struck with how fast the year has flown by and that we are quickly approaching the holiday season. Interesting little anecdote. I have always been a big proponent of no holiday decorations before Thanksgiving. That in my book, the holidays can't start until Santa's sleigh arrives at the end of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. But this year, I find myself craving the good feels of the holiday season a little early. And so the occasional holiday decorations now actually put a smile on my face rather than a scowl and a shake of my head. I know, right? But with that in mind, whatever your thoughts of the holidays are, whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you live, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. We invite you to join us for coffee hour following this morning's service, where there will be enriched snack items for today's coffee hour. And don't forget to join us back here in the sanctuary at noon for the town hall to learn all about the upcoming renovations. Online or in person, we're glad you're here. We affirm our mission to encourage, equip, and empower, and we ask that you join in the affirmation of our covenant with one another. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We have chosen to bring ourselves here to this sanctuary to gather as a community of faith. We join together in solidarity as a covenanted people who are drawn together by the promise of connection and the mysterious pull of the unanswerable. We draw on experiences of love and of wonder to lift our hearts and move us beyond the mundane. As seekers, wanderers, appreciators of nature, and creators of connection, our paths have converged today so that we might become present to the spirit that is worship. And so let us worship together. Each week it is our tradition to light a chalice which casts a circle of light to hold us all. In recognition of the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which will be observed this week to memorialize the 419 people who have died this past year due to global transphobia, I offer these words from the Reverend Jamie Yandel. The chalice is lit, and in the flames, the memory of our trans and non-binary ancestors do a dance of freedom and liberation, reminding us that we are whole and holy. We are loved beyond all measure, and in our refusal to accept anything less, may we know we are rooted in the infinite divinity, not relegated to the outskirts of the web of all existence, but enshrined at its core, and fleshed with stardust and fairy dust, an intentional creation of space where our many gods live.
Today's story is called The Curious Garden by Peter Brown, as both author and illustrator. There once was a city without gardens or trees of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. However, there was a child who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, you could always find Liam. Happily splashing through their neighborhood, it was one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. They was wandering around the old railway, as they did from time to time, when they stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago. And since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious child to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing they saw was a lonely patch of color. Wild flowers and plants were the last things they had expected to find there. But when they looked closer, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but they knew that they could help. So they returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and there were a few pruning problems. But the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely following by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. After spending their spring, summer, and the autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled their new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken its toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning and their handy new tools and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. I now invite our youth to head downstairs to their classes.
Good morning. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Margaret Carroll, and I have been a member of the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg for over 25 years. I agree with the Reverend Preacher Thomas of the Central Nassau UU Church. Generosity means there is enough for all to share. This is also the building block of the Poor People's Campaign, an organization I was asked to become involved with by a former UCH minister. Over 50 years ago, the PPC was the brainchild of Dr. Martin Luther King and others. Martin spoke of a new unsettling force that would make a change in the U.S. We know that change is necessary, and we are still committed to making change. Generosity is a key to making change. I first learned generosity being the second oldest child in a family of 6. I learned to share my toys, gifts, and all that I treasured. As a UU, where our foundation is love for all, promoting social justice, and the shared vision of making the best life that people can have on this earth, only extended my vision of generosity. As a UUU, your generosity ensures there will be enough for all to share.
The year that I lived in New York City, I was so poor I couldn't afford a single cup of coffee. I was lucky. I was housed, thanks to an arrangement with a loved one, and I rarely went hungry, thanks to a steady diet of scrambled eggs on toast. Every 2 weeks, I would splurge on a $6 cut of meat. I cleaned the apartment and fed the both of us, and in return, I had a safe place to stay for free. I had just escaped from one of those types of relationships that we'd rather forget than talk about, and I got on the train to Manhattan with one large suitcase and my safety and not much else. Every week I lived in New York City, I'd drop off more applications for minimum wage jobs, and every week passed without the phone ringing. I made a little bit of cash doing spare work here and there, and it allowed me to survive. One week I made a mistake. I went to a free event with a friend, but when I got there, I discovered that there was a $2 required coat check. Those $2 meant that my wallet was empty when I tried to get on the subway the next morning. That day, I walked 8 miles to my support group meeting. Around mile 5 of this journey, someone on the street approached me while I was waiting for a walk signal and asked me for spare change. And I put my hand in my pocket and smiled and handed her my last 85 cents. I had a rule for myself, you see. If someone asked me for help, give it. It's an act of faith. It's an act of laughing in the face of scarcity, because that sense of scarcity could have stomped my soul into the dirt if I had given it one iota of credence. What did it feel like to be that poor and give someone money? Well, sometimes it reminded me that I was still a part of the world, the great continuum of giving and receiving that connects us all. Sometimes it reminded me that there were plenty of things that I valued more than money. And sometimes, if I'm fully honest, it gave me a reassuring sense of superiority. There is still someone I can pity. There's someone below me on the food chain, someone who needs me, and I have the power to decide to help. That last feeling is not exactly a generous one. In fact, I would not claim that I was being a particularly good example on the days that I shared my pocket change just to feel like I wasn't the poorest person in the city and walked away feeling smug. A hard truth I've come to learn is that trying to do good things with a bad attitude often results in doing something that is accidentally harmful. What I'm trying to say is that giving matters, but how we give also matters. Have you ever received a birthday gift from someone which initially really excited you? Whatever it was, a concert ticket, a beautiful orchid, a new bicycle, a stylish watch. It was definitely what you wanted, and perhaps something you'd asked for. But then, the person who gave you this gift behaved in a way that ruined it. Perhaps there were unspoken expectations attached, or perhaps they seemed to think that the gift absolved them from being accountable for some sort of bad behavior. With the right attitude, generosity is a great and appreciated thing. With the wrong motivations, however, generosity turns sour. I believe the right attitude for generosity boils down to the desire to make someone's world a better place. And when we recognize our interconnectedness, that means making choices which create stronger relationships. There's a theory about respect. It goes like this. There are two definitions of respect. One definition is the respect of equality, knowing that you and another person both have immeasurable worth and treating each other as such. Expecting this kind of respect, the respect of peers, can guide us to hold our own needs in balance with those of others, while recognizing that we are all different. The other kind is the respect of authority. This is the kind that demands to be addressed by sir or ma'am, the kind that sees it as rude to be questioned, the kind that demands a closed-mouthed compliance. Expecting this kind of respect is all too often a reasonable explanation for violence, from a smack on the mouth from a parent to a taser dart from a police officer. It's justified, after all. They needed to learn some respect. And these two radically different definitions of respect come from two radically different ideas of how we ought to build relationships. So when we're called upon to be generous, it's a good time to ask, what kind of relationship are we building? Hierarchical or mutual? A relationship between equals or one where someone is superior? Every day, we in the United States experience one particular type of hierarchical relationship, that of economic class. Think of the terminology we use, higher class and lower class. Successful people are social climbers. The people on top are the super wealthy. The people on the bottom are the working class. The ones who have nothing are even lower than the low, almost out of this picture altogether. It's no surprise that in such a cultural context, donating capital resources is a unidirectional act. But wait, that sort of status is earned, right? After all, the people making all that money did so by working hard. Giving money to the poor is a fundamentally selfless act, sacrificing some of that hard-earned capital for those who don't even bother to clean themselves up and get jobs, right? There's only so much you can expect people to give up. If they worked so hard, they deserve to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Maybe if people living on the street spent their money on a good suit and a haircut, instead of their vices, they could pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Here's what Liberian-American poet and abolitionist educator Solaris Capehart has to say about that. They said, "Bootstrap theory is the idea that regardless of your position in life, through hard work you can achieve prosperity in this country. It's often used as a response to people talking about feeling held back due to their identity or circumstance. As a response to harm someone's experiencing, bootstrap theory is offensive. At best, it fails to be meaningful for a few reasons. 1, history matters. There are decisions generations before us made that shape our present circumstance. No one is born with a blank slate. 2, policy matters. There are policies in place that make it difficult for some people to thrive where they're at. 3, others' perceptions and actions matter. Whether through fear, unconscious bias, or actual violence, there are people like our trans siblings that have to worry about being attacked and killed in the streets on the daily. There are laws that try to help in these areas, but they aren't always successful. Sometimes they're purposefully hindered from being successful by people who would rather protect what they have than consider the good of their neighbor. Folks hear this and they're like, life ain't fair, do what you gotta do. But what if instead we said, life ain't fair, let's do what we gotta do to make it more fair? Some of y'all get so up in arms because you pulled it out of the mud. You fought and fought for what you got. But my love, you shouldn't have had to. You overcame odds that were stacked against you. That's amazing. But don't romanticize struggle so much that you fail to see how this country is letting people down. Now, that last part of what Solaris said really hits me in the feelings. Don't romanticize struggle so much that you fail to see how this country is letting people down. Because truly, in this country, it takes so little to lose everything. We've bought so deeply into the idea of worth by merit that statistically, most of us are just one injury or illness away from complete bankruptcy. What separates a middle-class person from an unhoused person, in many cases, is the luck of the draw, circumstances of birth, neurotypicality, physical ability, upbringing, age, race, gender, appearance, country of origin, all have far greater an impact on someone's economic prospects than any choice a person will ever have the opportunity to make. So when it comes to the things that we have agency over, there is fundamentally very little difference between the CEO and the sandwich maker. And one of those few things that we actually do get to control is how we choose to be in relationship with each other. When I was in seminary at Meadville Lombard Theological School, former president and former UCH minister, Lee Barker, was often paraphrased by the student body in regards to choices. Would I rather be right or would I rather be in relationship? Is a phrase that echoes through the halls on campus. Would I rather be right or would I rather be in relationship? I think there's a lot to chew on in that idea. And it's certainly become a cornerstone of my marriage. But I think we're both really bossy people. I think it also has some interesting implications when it comes to generosity. Thinking arbitrarily, charity is right. I won't argue with that. Charity is a good thing to do. But if we have a choice, what puts us in relationship? What is even better than the rightness of charity? One relationship-building alternative is mutual aid. With charity, the members are donors.
Recording in
mutual aid
progress.
Model, members are the people participating and making decisions. Charities tend to get run by professional teams and closed board meetings, while mutual aid projects are run transparently by volunteers invested in each other's survival. Charities follow the rules laid down by existing, flawed, and inequitable power structures. Mutual aid projects rely on unregulated sources of capital and voluntary labor. Charities help people conditionally and in a way that enables survival or mobility within the existing system, whereas mutual aid projects distribute resources without expectations or conditions, while working to restructure the social landscape and flatten hierarchies. In a mutual aid context, everyone is expected to participate in both giving and receiving. It's very difficult to see oneself as more or less important than another person when you're both taking home food from the same pantry. Another big alternative to the charity model is looking at privilege as a responsibility. It's kind of like saying, I was blessed with a voice that loves to sing, so when singing is asked of me, I say yes. Some folks were blessed with enough capital resources to help change the world, so when you have the opportunity to make change, it's time to say yes. Sure, writing a check is a great place to start, but don't let it end there. Just like voting, it's an important thing to do to try to help protect others, but there are hundreds of thousands more opportunities to improve public policy in the 4 years between election days. Feeling particularly poignant in these times, my personal definition of faith is that it gives us the means to, temporarily, travel directly from surviving to thriving without having to pass go. Similarly, a faith community is the place in which we can be temporarily exempt from the laws of that hierarchy of scarcity we were all born into, receiving and contributing resources as we need. I believe the church should be a place where we can reorder society on a minute scale to short-circuit the systems that create economic and class inequality in our larger society. Obviously, this is an aspirational model. Many faith communities do a decent job of living up to this goal, but in certain ways fall short, and that includes Unitarian Universalist congregations. I have yet to discover a UU community which has magically overcome our cultural context. And class division continues to exist in a multitude of ways, both spoken and unspoken. Now, at the church where I served my internship, I spent the better part of 2 years exploring narratives about class within the congregation. And together, we identified quite a few areas which were, let's say, ready for growth from an economic justice standpoint. But let me tell you a story about something that happened in that internship church, which proves that we have the potential to escape the more hierarchical practices of generosity. Every November, there is a national holiday when, traditionally, people get together with their loved ones and eat a big meal. Does this sound familiar? But 4 years ago, we were for the first time facing the realities of a holiday season in the context of the pandemic. In previous years, this congregation had offered a Thanksgiving feast open to community members of all means and backgrounds, a chance to share the holiday meal side by side with others. This was an event that many looked forward to throughout the season. In 2020, however, we knew that we needed to put plans of gathering and eating together on hold. But how could we allow Thanksgiving to pass without providing for those who depend on this event for physical, social, and spiritual nourishment? The ministry team and staff decided to work with a team of volunteers to help bring meals to those who wanted one, and we asked for responses from those willing to volunteer, as well as those who wanted a meal delivered. In the first few weeks after we announced this plan, I received many responses from people who were willing to deliver meals. In fact, I received quite a few responses from people who were eager to deliver meals. Several members of the congregation wrote to me that it would mean a lot to them to be assigned some deliveries. Being of service during this holiday season was extra meaningful during a year when days had so often felt meaningless. But here's where the story gets interesting. With the holiday coming up fast, I only had about 1/3 as many people who had asked to receive a meal as those who had offered to deliver one. I ended up having to put out a call encouraging people to accept meals. And in the end, we were able to feed around 60 families in the congregation and surrounding community. It was a very special day for the volunteers who cooked, and the volunteers who drove, and the volunteers who ate, a beautiful, bright spot in the midst of a difficult season. In that moment, the willingness to receive a Thanksgiving meal became a generous act. The needs which were present then and remain present now are connection, fulfillment, purpose, hope, a sense of community. Together, we have the means of surviving covered and are now offering each other the means of thriving. And this is the magic of the faith community. Church needs to be a mutual space. Each congregation needs people to give their time, talent, and capital because the people also have a need to be in the continuum of giving and receiving. Each of us will get very little fulfillment from this arrangement until we take the time to inspect what it is we think of ourselves when we give and when we receive. When we put ourselves in solidarity with each other, knowing that each of us is a being of immeasurable worth, knowing that what hurts one of us hurts us all, knowing that what heals one heart heals the world, the next part is easy. This loving solidarity is what gives us the power to break down the pillars of a system that condemns and exploits our own human family, so that the select few can continue hoarding wealth, and we can feel a thrill of sympathetic superiority when we can reach into our own pockets for change. Loving solidarity reminds us that our value is not dependent on what we give and how much. We are all holy and whole and deserving of the deep connection which comes from supporting each other into thriving. Each year, it seems like certain things about living in this world get more difficult, more tense, more exhausting. 2024 has not been gentle on many of us. If there's one thing we find amid the short days and cold nights this winter, let it be the wisdom to continue to choose relationship. Let this be the year that we learn not to stop at casting a ballot or writing a check. Let this be the year that we start to learn the deep satisfaction of living in solidarity and mutuality. Let a community of connective thriving be our holiday gift to one another. My prayer of hope is that we recognize that sharing our needs is as valuable as sharing our goods. I pray that we no longer allow what we give or what we take to set us apart from others, but to bring us closer together. I pray for the clarity for us to see through the carefully crafted illusions of scarcity and comparison, which are used to divide us. I pray that we reach out for each other as though for a sibling, a cousin, a dear friend, knowing that what happens to the least of us happens to us all. I pray that no one is forgotten. And that let this be our prayer and let it carry us forward into our struggling, wounded world today and for all the tomorrows to come. Now is the time when we engage as a community in the sharing of our joys and sorrows, our concerns and milestones. When we join together to hold each other in support and in celebration, we deepen our sense of interrelationship. We may find our sorrows eased and our joys magnified. I invite you to share them now through writing them on a slip or typing them in the virtual chat. Please indicate whether your message is okay to share out loud. You can also honor whatever you are holding in your heart by placing a stone into the water of community. Please make space for each other to return to our seats as we get used to this particular seating format. Spoken or unspoken, our hearts join with yours in carrying all that life brings. place one final stone today into the water in honor of all of those who cannot be with us and those around the world who are carrying their own profound sorrow and joy. Randa Todd shares some sorrows with us. Randa says 3 good friends are facing life-threatening surgeries last week. And struggling family member, struggling with loss and own challenges. Gail Ismart shares a gratitude. Gail says, I again want to thank Karen and your wonderful congregation for collecting toiletries for Gather the Spirit for Justice all this November. The needs of the Allison Hill low-income and homeless are growing as temperatures drop. These drives make it possible to hand out 2 toiletry items each to the more than 100 who line up for help and a hot breakfast. I wish you could see the smiles. For all that has been shared and those many concerns we hold deep in our hearts and yet remain unspoken, we journey with each other in love. Let's sing together. Let's join together now in the spirit of meditation and prayer. We'll open our hearts to this beautiful reminder of our interconnectedness, written by the Reverend Marta Valentin. In gatherings we are stirred like the leaves of the fall season, rustling around sacred trees, tossed hither and yon until we come to rest together, quietly, softly. We come to gather strength from each other. We come to give strength to each other. We come to ask for strength from the Spirit of all that is and is not. When our hearts sing or when they frown, it is the way of compassion telling us to give. It is the way of peace telling us to share our gifts, for we are happiest and most powerful when love is made apparent in and through us. Spirit of the circle that is love, as we twirl in this dance that is life, we give thanks for reminding us each day of our task of ministering to each other with a searching glance, a safe touch, a generous smile, a thoughtful word. Thank you for reminding us that we are always building our beloved comunidad. Thank you for reminding us that through our covenant with you, we covenant with each other and are made whole. In gratitude, we celebrate with open hearts and minds. We discover who we are, separate from each other and within one another. In this circle that holds all life, may we ever work toward widening its boundaries until there are none. Amen. Paz. Blessed be.
The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, an intentionally gathered congregation of freely thinking, loving people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by us. Each month, we share half of our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. For the month of November, we are sharing with the Disaster Relief Fund. The Disaster Relief Fund is part of a covenant between the Unitarian Universalist Association and congregations, between congregations who give generously to those in need and with our community partners. Currently, in addition to providing aid in several areas, the UUA is assisting congregations and communities impacted by Hurricane Helene. If you wish to contribute online, please visit uchbg.org homepage for options. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please consider giving what you are able.
We dedicate these gifts to the work of this congregation, weaving a tapestry of compassion and action, faith and fellowship, hope and wholeness.
I now invite you to join me in a responsive reading. Your response will be up on the screen. As I finish each sentence, you will join in on the shared reading. This is adapted from Forms of Abundance by Lorelei Greenwood Jones. What is abundance? What do we call riches and bounty? Abundance is all around us. That we are alive is priceless. That we are loved is beyond worth. Abundance is all around us. That we love other in turn fills our souls. Abundance is all around us. The gifts of spirit that our sacred source provides freely and without need of recompense. Abundance is all around us. The friends and family surrounding us, our belongings, our shelter, all are forms of abundance. Abundance is all around us. The seasons and tides forever circling, sunrises and sunsets, the blessings of another day. Abundance is all around us. With gratitude, with thanks, with love do we fill our hearts. Abundance is all around us. May you be forever blessed, remembering that even in times of scarcity, we are ever blessed. Abundance is all around us.
These benediction words are from the musician Amanda Palmer. Asking for help with shame says, "You have the power over me." Asking with condescension says, "I have the power over you." But asking for help with gratitude says, "We have the power to help each other."